Okay, in this session we're going to address paragraph 1 through 5 of the master key system. And we're going to do this by first listening to a section of the video in the regular narrated way. We're then going to analyze it, we're going to dig in, we're going to study it, we're going to take it apart, we're going to try to understand what is he really saying, and then we're going to listen to it again, and you can then in yourself see if there is a difference between the first few minutes of the recording and then listening to the same few minutes of the recording of these 5 paragraphs and see if you actually understand it better. So here we go. First we'll have a listen. That much gathers more is true on every plane of existence, and that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. Mind is creative, and conditions, environment, and all experiences in life are the result of our habitual or predominant mental attitude. The attitude of mind necessarily depends upon what we think. Therefore, the secret of all power, all achievement, and all possession depends upon our method of thinking. This is true because we must be before we can do. And we can do only to the extent which we are. And what we are depends upon what we think. We cannot express powers that we do not possess. And the only way by which we may secure possession of power is to become conscious of power. And we can never become conscious of power until we learn that all power is from within. So there we go. We have these 5 paragraphs, which is just over 2 minutes of reading or listening, and perhaps some part made sense, perhaps a few words made sense. Let's now go dig in and see what's actually in those 5 parts. We're going to start off with part number 1, the very first sentence actually of the master key system. He says that much gathers more is true on every plane of existence, and that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. Now, what is that? There is actually 4 parts. That much gathers more. He says that's true on every plane of existence. And then he says that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. 4 little parts. What is the first part? That much gathers more. Much gathers more. Much is a lot. Much is many. Automatically he says that attracts more of it, more of the same. Well, do we know someone in our life that is kind of like pretty much sick, and then they get more sick, and then they get more sick, and every time they seem to have another disease and another condition and another surgery and another medication? So, the more sick they are, the more sick they become. That is what he is saying as his very opening statement, that much gathers more. You may have heard the statement, if it rains, it pours. You know, so if it begins to rain and there is a lot of rain, well, expect a lot more rain. Another example of this is, I'm sure every one of you has heard the statement, the rich are getting richer. Now, what do we also hear on the other side? That the poor are getting poorer. Because poverty is loss of wealth, is loss of abundance, is scarcity. It will lead to greater loss He says that's just as true. In other words, the negative is just as true as the positive. Health. If you have a lot of health, you can expect your health to get better and better. Because people that are healthy, they're driven to do exercises. They're driven to make sure they eat good food. They tend to be the people that think even better thoughts. So therefore, their health is becoming stronger and stronger. So he says it's true on every plane of existence. What does that mean? Well, existence is what we are, and every plane means every aspect of our existence, which is our mental plane of existence, is our physical plane, our body, mental, our thoughts, our emotional plane of existence. All of that is every plane, emotional, the feelings, the financial plane, our money. That much gathers more. In that case, in terms of money, that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. So, opening statement, very powerful statement. Actually, if you never ever learn anything else from the Master Key System, cling on to that one, because right there is already a major law in the universe, a major law in our lives, in our personal lives. The easiest to examine is that whatever is a lot is gonna get more, no matter on what aspect of your life we're talking about, and whatever is a little or not enough or scarce will lead to even less of it. Okay, moving on to paragraph number 2. Mind is creative, and conditions, environment, and all experiences in life are the result of our habitual and predominant mental attitude. Now, one of the things that you notice is as you watch the videos and the PowerPoints and all the tools that we have is that we color words, and we color words because we're accentuating the words that have importance. In this case, mind is creative. Mind is a word that you will see, probably it's the most frequent word or concept in the entire Master Key System. The mind being the place where our thinking happens, where our thoughts are contained. And there is different parts to the mind, which the course is going to get into. So, but mind is really the pivotal point, and you'll come to discover why it is the most important part of the Master Key System. He begins by saying it is creative. Creative meaning it is able to create. It is able to bring things into reality, into existence. That is what creation is all about. And here in this case, it's our mind. It's your mind that is creative. Creative to do what? To actually create conditions, environment, and all experiences. Now, when Charles Haanel says all, or every, or always, he really means it in the absolute way. He means, in that case, that all conditions in your life, all environments of your life, all experiences in your life are the result of your creative mind. What are conditions? Conditions, well, you may be healthy or you may be sick. Environment, you may be in a poor environment, you may be in a rich environment. Experiences, you may have good experiences and bad experiences. Well, they're all the result of your creative mind. What part of the mind? Well, here he specifies it isn't just any thought, because today we know, I don't know who counted them or how they counted them, but supposedly we're thinking somewhere between 40,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. That's a heck of a lot of thoughts. As a matter of fact, if you've done already exercise 1 of chapter 1 and you've sat there, you've probably found that your mind is racing through this and this and that and there and there and there, and it's non-stop thinking. Well, it isn't all these thoughts that matter. It is the habitual thoughts and the predominant thoughts. What does that mean? Habitual, based on habit, based on what we know, based on what we're used to. That is what habitual is. Predominant is what dominates, what is actually at the top, which is dictating, which is ruling, taking dominion. So those thoughts that are in our mind, that are the most prevalent, the most defined, the most dominant, and the most frequent, the most regular, those are the ones that end up creating the conditions in our life, the environment in our life, the experiences in our life. And why is that? Because our mind is creative. Isn't it amazing how paragraph per paragraph it's as if we're reading a whole book? Well, actually, you're right, because it is said that the Master Key is written based on a distillation. Each chapter, each paragraph is a distillation of books. Actually, each paragraph is the distilled end result of 3 to 4 very significant books. Not your average, little fantasy story. No, really significant books. Charles Haanel has drawn the best out of the best resume out of those books and has instilled them paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. It's like sucking in a whole library of books, of the best books in the world. And that's why the mind gets overloaded at first when you read it. But our mind is creative, and the conditions, environment, and all experiences in our life are the result of our habitual or predominant mental attitude. So now we can move on to number 3, paragraph 3, the attitude of mind. The attitude of mind. What is attitude? Let's first read it. The attitude of mind necessarily depends upon what we think. Therefore, the secret of all power, all achievement, and all possession depends upon our method of thinking. The attitude of our mind. Attitude is the way it is, the character, the impression it leaves. All of that is the result of the attitude of the mind, the kind of the mind, the how the mind is. That's the attitude of the mind. What does that depend upon? Not only upon our thinking, upon what we're thinking. Attitude of our mind depends upon what we're thinking. Based on that, the secret, the key, the opening to what? We're opening up, abracadabra, 3 things. All power, again, that absolute, it's all power, not just some power, all power. All achievement, anything you will ever achieve in your life, all achievement, anything you will ever get in your life, possession, anything you'll ever own in your life. All power, all achievement, all possession, the secret key to it, the access to it, the opening to it is depending upon our method of thinking. Our method, how we are thinking. So, the attitude of mind necessarily depends on what we think, and therefore all power, all achievement, all possession, the secret to it depends on our method of thinking. Now we come to a bit of a weird paragraph, and it sort of created a pretzel in my brain when I read it and reread it and tried to understand it. I almost wanted to skip over it. is this fourth one here that says, this is true because we must be before we can do, and we can do only to the extent that we are, and what we are depends upon what we think. And I'm like trying to catch up, what really is he saying? Well, there is three concepts in it. There is the thinking, there is the being, or what we are, and there is what we can do. And it is actually in that order. It begins with the thinking. Whatever we think will define what we are. If we think healthy, we will be healthy. If we think rich, we will be rich. Become and eventually be rich. So, in order to be able to do something, in order to be able to do richness or healthiness or any other wish you have to first be it. And in order to be it, you have to think it. So, he kind of repeats the same thing between these two here. And he says it's true because we must be before we can do. Be before we can do. You have to be healthy before you can do healthy. And we can only do to the extent that we are. That's actually saying the same thing. We can only do healthy to the extent that we are healthy. And then he catches up to the origin of that. How can we be, or how can we are healthy? How can that be created? Is by thinking healthy. So, thinking healthy, you become healthy, you are healthy. Based on your health, you can do healthy. That's what that sort of weird paragraph means. This is true because we must be before we can do. We can do it only to the extent that we are it, and what we are depends upon what we think. Once again, the mind obviously being the dominant force, the controlling force. The final one of the 5 paragraphs. We cannot express powers that we do not possess. And the only way by which we may secure possession of power is to become conscious of power. And we can never become conscious of power until we learn that all power is from within. That's quite a mouthful, so let's chop it up. First part. If we want to be able to express powers. What is express powers? Well, it may be the power to do a particular talent, power to speak, the power to do business, the power to build relationships, the power to educate. Expressing it means giving expression to it, bringing it outward, sharing it. Expressing it is what is seen and experienced and perceived by others. That what was from your inside, you're bringing it out towards your outside. We cannot do that. We cannot, whatever powers we may have, we cannot express them until we have them, until we possess them. Possession is ownership, is dominion. So we have to own it before we can express it. That kind of makes logic, huh? We must have, if we want to do health powers, healing powers, for instance, we must have these healing powers. We cannot express them without owning them. And the only way, he says, that we can assure or secure possession of that power is actually to become conscious of that power. What's being conscious? Conscious is aware, is knowing it, is being one with it. Conscious, knowing, conscious, you know it together. Conscious awareness, alertness to. Conscious of power, that allows you to secure ownership of that power. When you do, automatically now when you own the power, you can express the power. And we can never become conscious, aware of that power until we learn, and here we go, this could be the other title of the Master Key System. It would be All Power is from Within. That right there could be the title of the Master Key System. All power, and again, the absolute. He's not saying a little bit of power or some of the power or once in a while power. No, he says all power, every kind of power, any time there is power, in any way there is power, it'll always come from within. Within meaning inside of you. In the rest, you will discover the opposite to that, and we've purposely put a little white dash in between there to contrast it with without. Without, normally in our regular today's English language, without is without it, without limitations, without expression. It is not there. What Charles Haanel means with without is on the outside, within on the inside. So, all power, he says, is not on the outside. It begins and it originates from the inside of us. All power is from within. Now, once we know that, then we can become conscious, we can become aware, alert, knowing of that power. Once we realize that all the power is inside, we can begin to become aware of it. Once we become aware of it, then we gain possession, ownership of it. And once we have ownership of it, then we get the capacity to express the power. Sometimes I tend to believe that with the Master Key System, you need to read it in reverse in order to really understand it. But that's what happens with words of wisdom that have incredible depth, have incredible concentration, that are the result of very profound deductive power. So the last paragraph in repeat, we cannot express powers that we do not possess, and the only way by which we may secure possession of power is to become conscious of power, and we can never become conscious of power until we learn that all power is from within. Well, here we are. We've gone through 5 paragraphs. Now you may remember from briefly ago what you sort of gathered from listening to the video that played the 5 paragraphs. Now let's listen to these 5 paragraphs again and see if they make any more sense. That much gathers more is true on every plane of existence, and that loss leads to greater loss is equally true. Mind is creative, and conditions, environment, and all experiences in life are the result of our habitual or predominant mental attitude. The attitude of mind necessarily depends upon what we think. Therefore, the secret of all power, all achievement, and all possession depends upon our method of thinking. This is true because we must be before we can do. And we can do only to the extent which we are. And what we are depends upon what we think. We cannot express powers that we do not possess. And the only way by which we may secure possession of power is to become conscious of power. And we can never become conscious of power until we learn that all power is from within. And there you go. Congratulations. You have gone through the first 5 paragraphs. Actually, a great listening, re-listening to these 5 would be a good idea. To do that over and over again. You may want to play it every morning, a couple times, 2 or 3 times, and you want to replay it in the evening, right before going to sleep, another few times. One of the tools that we will make available is also going to permit you to listen to a paragraph, have a pause in between, quite possibly with some music, and then the next paragraph, and give you time to let it sink in and move on to the next paragraph. Once you're ready, once you fully understand these 5 paragraphs, then you're ready to come to the next step, paragraph 6 to 10 of chapter 1 of the Master Key System. Thank you for listening.